we evolved in our genetically modern form 350,000 years ago. Okay, so one question is, well, what the hell were we doing for the 330,000 years, like before the Ice Age, say? And the answer is, well, we were engaging in nonstop intertribal warfare. And then within our own tribes, every time anybody got something that everyone else didn't have immediately, we just killed them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we had to figure out how to,
We had to figure out how to let some people have more than other people some of the time. Because the alternative solution is, like, imagine a new product comes along, like a flat screen TV. Well, the first people to get the flat screen TV are the billionaires. But if you wait 5 years, then everybody gets a flat screen TV.
Or
but
an iPhone.
You have to wait. And so if the socialist idea is something like, well, if a new innovation comes along that makes people wealthy, it can't be implemented until every single person can have exactly the same amount all at once. Well, so it looks to me like the cost of innovation is inequality, because things have to start somewhere. Now, you know, in the West that if you're rich, what does it mean if you're really rich compared to just like middle class? It means your house has exactly the same amenities, but 3 times the square footage. It's like, or your car is more luxurious while you're stuck in the same traffic, right? The incremental difference is it's trivial between middle class and ultra wealthy, you know. And I mean, people might say, well, you know, that's easy for you to say because you're rich. It's like, if you're middle class, you're rich. And if you're too stupid to realize that, you know nothing about the world. And so in South Africa, but we know one of the things that promotes violence, like this is absolutely crystal clear from the anthropological, sociological, and psychological literature. Extreme inequality breeds male violence like mad, because low status, poor men have nothing to lose by engaging in mayhem, right? You see this in gang warfare. You see it, you know, so for example, if you look in North America, this is true across the world, places where everyone's poor, there isn't much violence. And places where everyone's rich, there isn't much violence. But places where some people are poor and some people are rich, look the hell out. And South Africa's got that in spades. And so the easiest solution for a politician, especially an unscrupulous one, is to say, well, you see those people over there in that house? They took it from you. That's what the bloody Bolsheviks said to the peasants. And that worked very effectively. It's like, soon there were no people who were rich. Right, none. And then everyone was dead. And so, okay, so you guys have this problem in spades, and the communist influence, it's stronger now than it was 40 years ago?
Yes, but also not. So that's the irony. So that goes to the point about the ship I mentioned. So the ship's headed in the wrong direction, but even though the ship is heading in the wrong direction, the ship is sinking. And what I mean by that is
that's a bad combination.
Yes. So the fact that the ship is sinking has become a bigger problem than the fact that it's headed in the wrong direction. And when I say the ship is sinking, I mean that we just have massive state failure in South Africa. So they want to implement all these very radical policy ideas, and they have become more radical because they talk about a 2-phase revolution. Phase 1 is getting control of the levers of power through democracy. And phase 2 is, once you have power, you need to use the levers of power to implement your socialist ideas, which is where they are now. So we have this plethora of new, very radical leftist policy ideas in South Africa. But on the one hand, they're not really able to implement this because, firstly, of large-scale corruption, but just sheer incompetence within the South African government. So every sphere, everything that the government is supposed to be doing in South Africa, with the exception of tax collection, is collapsing.
Okay, tell us what that looks like. Like, can we start with the stability of the power grid? Like, what's the difference between South Africa now as a modern industrialized state and South Africa, say, 10 years ago? What are you seeing fraying? What does it look like in the streets? And
so we can literally take any example, but let's take power as an example. We started having rolling blackouts maybe a decade ago. And it was you would have an hour without electricity because they're not able to provide electricity for everyone because they didn't build power stations.
Well, providing electricity for everyone turns out to be very difficult.
Yes.
You better stay on top of it.
So you have to build stations, but you also have to maintain them.
Right.
And neither of these two are happening. So we're about at, I think the last time I saw, about at half of the capacity we would have been if the power stations were maintained. So
with a massive population increase.
Yes, exactly. And so that's one part of the problem. But then, so where we are now, initially, it's the metaphor. Let me say this because I think this is relevant. So Cyril Ramaphosa, who's the president of South Africa now, was the chief negotiator for the ANC during the negotiations for the
African National Congress.
That's it, yes. The ruling party. And so one member of parliament who was an opposition member of parliament wrote in his memoirs that he was part of the negotiations, and he asked, during this negotiations, he asked Ramaphosa, who's, as I said, the president at the moment, what's your plan for dealing with the whites? To which he said, well, that's easy. You deal with them like boiling a frog alive. The metaphor, putting the frog in the water and just lifting.
Hear that metaphor a lot nowadays in many places.
Yes, just lifting the temperature gradually, and then the frog doesn't jump out. And so the problem with that is we really see that something gets worse. We hear that we have, for example, 1 hour of rolling blackouts, and everyone complains, and that's fine for a week or a month. And then it's 2 hours, and then it becomes 3 hours.
People can adapt, unbelievably well. And the new normal becomes normal so fast, it's just beyond. Like, I just remember during COVID, it's like 6 months in, it was like, oh, this is how life is. And you just forget about what it was like before. And part of that's a testament to human adaptability, but it's also an indication of the fragility of even our fundamental expectations. Okay, so there's a level of collapse that is slow enough so people won't rise up and and so
now we have times where there are up to 12 hours a day without electricity. And
that's everywhere. And what, people have their own diesel generators? How do you deal with that?
We put up solar powers, so people adapt to that. Those who can afford it, you have solar power.
Right. So the richer people still have power.
Exactly. Ironically, making the gap between the rich and the poor bigger.
Well, look, as soon as your infrastructure starts to deteriorate, the poor people. Like, people die from the bottom up, right?
Literally, that's
And
so water is an example. So we lose about 40, almost 50% of our water as a result of leakages, pipes not being maintained. And the funniest story was in one town, the town didn't have water. And then the municipal manager said, but remember, these pipes were built by the apartheid government, so we should blame the pipes. So they're not maintaining the pipes, but the fact that they were built by the previous government means that the pipes are the problem. But not maintaining them.
That's right. Well, that's like failure as indication of our moral virtue. That's what the degrowth people have been doing in the West too. We're not economic failures. We're aiming at degrowth, and man, we're hitting the target.
And so we have, that's a good example where, again, people who are more wealthy can make a plan. They dig boreholes or something.
It's the definition of wealth.
Yes.
You're protected from entropy.
And the people who suffer the most are poor black South Africans who live in townships who die from drinking water that is contaminated.
Right. When the water would be even a more crucial issue than power.
Exactly.
Right. They're integral. What else do you see?
We have the transport system, for example. Our railways have collapsed. The port in Durban, in the eastern part of the country, last I read was 405, rated number 405 on a list of 405 ports. So the worst one in the world, which is a big deal because you need a well-functioning port for the economy to function. So that's an example.
For people not to die.
Again, the transport, I mentioned that the fact that the roads aren't maintained. And then we have these practical things like policing is more than just practical. So, and once again, an example of the more wealthy people who are able to adapt to that. So we
hire private security.
Exactly. So private security in South Africa is currently double the size of the police and the army combined. Because the police are, I was in an army.
So that's really a reversion to something like, it's quasi-feudal society at that point.
Yes, and then what happens again in poorer communities is they resort to some form of mob justice because the police aren't there. There's a guy who rapes people in your community. Everyone knows who he is, and the police doesn't do anything. So the people deal with him themselves. So you get vigilante justice in South Africa. So that we can go down the list. The education system. One poll found that 80% of the schools in South Africa are dysfunctional. I believe the number is the top 200 schools in South Africa which are predominantly the more wealthy schools, have more distinctions for children who finish high school than the next 6,000 schools combined. So the education system. And so again, everything, one economist who's a very renowned economist in South Africa, he sort of makes a joke, but it's not just a joke. He says people ask him, where should you invest? What should you do to make money? And he says, it's easy. You should look at what is the government supposed to be doing and invest in something that is in the private sphere that is doing that thing.